What if I told you that there is one single decision, just one, that separates the empath who suffers endlessly from the one who finally becomes free? Stay with me, because what Carl Jung revealed about this turning point will change everything you thought you knew about emotional liberation. Carl Jung said that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But for empaths, that privilege comes at a price most people cannot even begin to comprehend. Because before they can become who they are, they must first stop being who everyone else needs them to be. You see, most people think freedom is about leaving a place, ending a relationship, or starting over somewhere new. But Jung discovered something far more profound and far more uncomfortable. True freedom is an internal event, and for the empath, it begins with the single most terrifying decision a deeply feeling person can make. The decision to choose themselves. Here's why that sounds simple, but is absolutely revolutionary for the empath. And trust me, by the end of this, you will understand why most empaths delay this decision for years, sometimes for an entire lifetime. According to Carl Jung, the empath's psyche is wired for what he called participation mystique, a deep and often unconscious merging with the emotional states of others. From the moment they enter a room, they are absorbing, processing, carrying. They don't just notice your pain, they feel it as their own. They don't just observe your anxiety, they metabolize it. This isn't a choice. Jung understood it as a fundamental orientation of the psyche. The empath is built to connect, to feel, to hold space. But here's where it becomes a prison. Carl Jung discovered that this same orientation that makes empaths extraordinarily compassionate also makes them extraordinarily vulnerable to what he called psychic servitude. They become servants of other people's emotional worlds, not because they're weak, but because their nervous system cannot distinguish between their own suffering and someone else's. They carry burdens that were never theirs to carry. They solve problems they didn't create. They stay in situations that are slowly destroying them, because leaving feels like abandoning someone in pain. And Jung identified something chilling about this pattern. The empath doesn't just tolerate this dynamic. They build their entire identity around it. Jung called this the inflation of the helper archetype. The empath begins to believe unconsciously that their worth is measured entirely by their usefulness to others. If they're not healing someone, they feel purposeless. If they're not sacrificing something, they feel selfish. If they're not in pain on behalf of another person, they feel guilty for being at peace. This is the trap. And Jung understood exactly how it works. Listen carefully, because this is the mechanism that keeps empaths stuck for decades. According to Carl Jung's theory of complexes, a complex is an emotionally charged cluster of ideas and memories that operates beneath conscious awareness. For the empath, the central complex is often what Jung called the savior complex, a deep unconscious belief that they exist to rescue others from their darkness. This complex doesn't announce itself. It disguises itself as love, as loyalty, as devotion. The empath genuinely believes they are acting from compassion, when in reality they are acting from compulsion. And there is an enormous difference between the two. Jung said that compulsion wears the mask of virtue. And nowhere is this more true than in the empath who cannot stop giving. But here's where the turning point emerges. And this is the moment that changes everything. Carl Jung described a process he called the collapse of the persona. The persona is the mask we wear to meet the demands of the external world. For the empath, this mask is the ever-available healer, the tireless giver, the one who never says no. But Jung discovered that no persona can sustain itself indefinitely against the truth of the authentic self. Eventually the mask cracks, and when it does, the empath is confronted with a devastating realization. They have been pouring from a vessel that has been empty for a very long time. This is the crisis point. And Jung didn't see crisis as failure. He called it the gateway to individuation, the moment when the false self begins to dissolve and the true self demands to be acknowledged. And the decision that emerges from this crisis is the one that frees the empath forever. Here's what Jung understood that most people never grasp. The decision is not about becoming selfish. It is not about shutting down emotionally. It is not about building walls or becoming cold. The decision that frees the empath is the conscious, deliberate, irreversible choice to stop abandoning themselves in order to be present for everyone else. Jung called this the withdrawal of projections. The empath stops projecting their own need for healing onto others. They stop seeing broken people as assignments. They stop treating their own rest as laziness and their own boundaries as betrayal. They reclaim what Jung called the unlived life, all the energy, the creativity, the joy, the peace that they had been sacrificing on the altar of other people's dysfunction. And what happens next is what Jung called enantiodromia, the great reversal. The empath who was always available becomes intentionally selective. The one who was endlessly patient becomes strategically protective of their time. The one who said yes to everything learns the sacred and liberating power of no. But here's what makes this transformation so profoundly different from ordinary self-improvement. According to Carl Jung, the empath doesn't lose their sensitivity through this process. They refine it. They stop feeling everything indiscriminately and begin feeling with discernment. They stop absorbing every emotion in the room and start choosing which emotions deserve their attention. Jung called this conscious feeling, and it represents the highest evolution of the empathic gift. The empath who has made this decision becomes something Jung described as psychologically complete. They love, but they no longer lose themselves in love. They give, but they no longer give from an empty place. They care deeply, but they no longer care at the expense of their own survival. They have learned what Jung called the paradox of wholeness, that taking care of yourself is not the opposite of caring for others. It is the prerequisite for it. And here's the final piece that makes this decision absolutely irreversible. Carl Jung discovered that once someone has tasted authentic selfhood, they cannot go back to living as a fragment of someone else's story. The empath who has chosen themselves has crossed what Jung called the threshold of consciousness. They see the old patterns for what they are. They recognize the guilt as manufactured. They understand that the people who resent their boundaries were only comfortable with their limitlessness. And they accept, with clarity and without apology, that some relationships cannot survive their wholeness. Not because the empath has changed for the worse, but because those relationships required their incompleteness to function. Jung said that the most courageous act a person can perform is to become conscious. For the empath, consciousness means finally understanding that they are not responsible for other people's healing, that their compassion is a gift, not an obligation, that their light belongs to them first. This is the life decision that frees an empath. Not a dramatic exit, not a confrontation, not a grand declaration. It is a quiet, internal shift. A moment where the empath looks at their own reflection and for the first time in their life says, "I choose you." And according to everything Carl Jung spent his lifetime studying, that single decision, that one act of radical self-loyalty, is the beginning of everything the empath was always meant to become. Not someone who stops feeling, but someone who finally feels for themselves, with the same depth and devotion they once reserved only for others. That is freedom, and once it is chosen, it can never be unchosen again.